Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session at Adobe Live. And we're joined today, I'm very happy about this, by the one and only What Would Joe Do? Joe Allam. Joe, how's it going?
Hello, hello. It feels like it's been a while, but it's been a while since we've done a stream together. But
We haven't been on a
yeah,
stream for a long time. And I was so happy when I saw your name come through on the invite. I was like, yes, I've got a million questions for Joe. So hopefully I won't use this stream just to ask all of my questions.
well,
Um,
please get all your questions in the chat.
yeah, form a queue. But yes, we'll definitely, we're covering so much good stuff today. We're doing a masterclass, right, Joe?
Well, we are opening up a week-long hackathon. So this is going to be part one of a three-part stream. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I do believe. I will double check my calendar, but I'm pretty sure we are following that.
Yeah.
And this is potentially it's going to be a bit of fun, a bit of a test on my part, and yeah, something that you guys can get involved with as well. So I could run through in the moment of what we're doing. So we are going to be making or attempting to make a photo book, or rather some layouts of a photo book. We're not necessarily planning to make the whole book because I think that's unrealistic. But we're going to be going through primarily with InDesign, but potentially also touching into some other apps and making some layouts of how I may piece together some photos, some information, and other things. It's something I've personally wanted to do for years, but I've always held myself back because I always think if I'm making a book about a destination, I can always return. I can always get more images. I can always get more information. Where do you draw the line before you actually finish it and release it? And I don't want to be one of those people who goes somewhere for 3 days and then makes a guide on how to visit there because 3 days, what can you do?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna do that. For those who don't know, my background is completely in design. So I started off studied graphic design throughout all the way into uni. Had various jobs at different large companies and all sorts. Not that I want to be dropping some names, but I've done some big work at Disney, which was a fun one. Did a lot of
Love
digital
that.
stuff there. But where I did a lot of InDesign stuff was actually when I was working at an advertising agency, primarily for pharmaceuticals, actually, which that's a whole other story for another day. But that
Yeah.
I was doing all sorts of artworking and getting design work ready for print. And the guidelines and restrictions on typography in pharmaceuticals is a minefield. You have laws and
Wow.
regulations on minimum millimeter size of various things. So I'd have to go through with a fine tooth
Wow.
comb and piece everything together and, make sure it fit legally, but also make sure it was creatively as best it could
Wow.
be. So yeah, InDesign was kind of my jam. And I must admit, it's been a while since I've had some heavy InDesign sessions. So I'm looking forward to this, going through and
Yeah.
yeah, building some things.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to it too. And I've got my pen and paper ready. And also to share with you all, because we're doing this throughout the week, we're giving away some prizes. So there is a Creative Cloud subscription up for grabs and also a book, right, Joe?
Yes, yes. So hopefully what I can share with you today will be enough to get you started with building some of your own layouts. And then you can follow along on Wednesday, where I'll probably by this point be tweaking some of the layouts and populating with some content and doing some other things. And then by the end of the week, so before Friday, you can share some of your layouts. And I believe we'll be going through and choosing someone, and they can win. Yeah,
Amazing.
Creative Cloud. And there is a book that I reference quite a lot. So this book here called Grid Systems or Raster System. It's a bilingual book in English and German. It's a fairly old publication, to the point that there is some noticeable things that do stand out to me. So I'm not necessarily going to personally endorse this because it seems to only think that there are male designers in the world. So look past that and recognize that the grid and the typography content is very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a brilliant book, and I do reference the technical aspect of it quite a lot. So that is a great thing that I think we may throw in. And maybe if there's anything else we can think of throughout the week.
Yeah,
I think
so. Let's have a think. And we're in good company today, Joe. We always are. Especially we got the Monday crew who are all present. So I want to say a quick hello, Stuart. I can see you in there. Sean, Nitin as well. Hey, Mustafa. Angus is here as well. Andreas, Jackie. Yeah, everyone's all in. Full registered complete, and Linda as well. They're brilliant. So any questions for Joe today, get them in the chat. We're live on Behance. So if you're watching via YouTube, the chat's all in Behance. So come in there, and any questions you have for Joe as we go. And Joe, start us off, right? Photo books. This is what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
How are these used today? Like, are these really like do people use these as a portfolio to go in for a kind of interview? Because I know that I've made photo books of the kids at various years old or whatever. But are they used more professionally than personally, or is it both?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I think I'm potentially, I'm not going to say I'm the worst person to answer this, but I know that I'm a very patient person. So I will look through someone's portfolio in any format that it exists, pretty much. But I know that there's a lot of people who don't have time for that, or they couldn't care less if it was physical or if it's digital. So in terms of portfolios, these days, I think a lot of people are just as happy making like an iPad layout and showing things, or even just showing something like an Instagram. I think that's a little bit of a shame because there's so much more of a story that you can tell when you create your own layout. For me, the type of photography that I create isn't necessarily just single images. I mean, yes, I'm taking single images, but I always think of them in collections. I think of them as journeys. And so with that in mind, I will openly say my photos aren't the bangers. They're not the hero shots that everyone kind of expects of a photographer. However, when you see them collected and you see them in a journey, maybe it starts to tell more of a picture and a story about that, which is also why I love to share my photos in video and in vlogs, because you show that journey. So in terms of making a photo book, primarily for me, it's because I want to make a book for myself. I want to look back through my images. I want to look back through my journeys. I always make things for myself primarily. And I find enjoyment from that. And I think I will always find enjoyment from that. I won't get tired of that, because if I'm making it for something that I want to look at, then I'll always have fun doing it. And hopefully other people will also enjoy it and see it. And most primarily get inspired to do the same thing themselves. Because I think creativity could solve the majority of the world's problems if we just had a bit of a creative twist on things.
I completely agree. There's nothing better, is there, than sitting with a photo book, or a recipe book, by the way, but a photo book with a cup of tea and just going through it and just remembering all of the memories. It's love. So I'm all for this 100%. I've got like shelves next to me, which you probably can't see here, and they're full of photo albums. It's literally albums, and I love it. So I'm looking forward to today. Really glad. Yeah.
Cool. Should we jump into it?
Yes, go for it.
So hopefully we should be able to jump to my screen in a moment. So let's start off from the very, very beginning. So we open InDesign, and we're going to create a new document. And it's got my previous one saved. So let's just go from how it would look from the beginning. So first of all, when you're making a book or some sort, or just anything in InDesign, really, how big is it going to be? What size you want to work with? I've already decided that I'd like to work with something around the B5 size, which, for reference, is about this sort of size, if you can see that on my camera. And it's like a good handheld size. It's not too cumbersome. It's not going to take up too much space. It's also a common size for printers and paper stock, so they're not going to be wasting pages by, trimming paper and all sorts. So you can really maximize what you've got. And I would recommend sticking to paper sizes that exist. So in InDesign, we've got all sorts of presets here. So I do have one B5, which is 176 by 250 mil. I don't know what it is in inches, unfortunately. It's probably some weird decimal. So 176 by 250. So it's going to ask us how many pages we want, and this can grow throughout your document. So we don't really know how big the thing's going to be, but I'm going to start with 12, and we're going to start on page 1. Now, working with typography, which by the way is the backbone of design, it's probably one of my favorite things in life. I love typography. I love the way that it holds things together. And part of that is working with grids and grid systems. If you know me well, you know that I like to keep things organized and tidy and regimented, and that is all based upon grids and systems. So I like to work with 12 column grids, and this might surprise some people because that could be quite high. I generally like to have 12 because 12 as a number is divisible by 3, 4, 2, 6, 1, and 12. So you've got plenty of options. If you have 12 columns, you can create a variety of layouts. You've got even spacing on things. You've got odd spacing that you can work with. It's just very flexible. Wow. So regardless of the size of the document, I love working with 12 columns, and we'll just work out the things around it.
Do you know, Joe, oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, I'll just turn on the preview so that we can see what's happening behind the screen here. Yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say, one thing that I learned from Tony, who's in the chat today, by the way. So, hey, Tony. One thing I learned from Tony was that in the first days when I was looking at InDesign, some of Tony's advice was to get a magazine and a ruler and to learn about how other people that are using grids, so get like Vogue or whatever, and then take a ruler and start drawing the lines of where you see the text on the page, look at how many grids they're using. I've never seen 12. So this is, and I think
12 can be high for a lot of people, especially if you're doing, facing pages as I am. So that's effectively going to be 24 across a double page spread. But it's just what I found comfort in working with. And I very rarely create anything that's actually a single column. But it's that granularity of being able to, is this a 3 column or is this a 4 column? And working with that as I space things together. So I've just turned on the preview and we're now going to see what's happening behind the scenes. So we've got our 12 columns and we've got our even margin at the moment, which is set to the default of 12.7. So I'm going to play around with this. And by the way, throughout this whole hackathon series, the design and the idea will likely change. So I want to keep this as authentic as possible and actually design as we're going through and show our things rather than having a pre-made design and then breaking it down saying, here's what I made earlier. So I'm going to try and run through it as we're going. So I'm going to see what we look like. Again, keeping with these sort of measurements that are divisible by 6s primarily. So for our bottom, let's unlink these. So if we imagine 12 is our sort of base, so think of that as a scale of 1. Our bottom could be, maybe we can go more. Maybe we can go to a 3. So the inside, so this is going to be where the page actually folds. Now in terms of the document, we're actually going to make this a little bit larger, but remember when you bind a book, you do lose space as it goes into the spine. So to make things comfortable on the eye and to make it appear as though it's even, we're actually going to give our inside margin a little bit more. So I'm going to keep this one again. Let's go for 18 and let's set our outside to 12. So if we see here, so we've got a bit of weight at the top, some edge space on the right, a large space around the bottom, and then inside, which could potentially go a little bit larger actually. Maybe the inside we could set to 24.
Says in the chat, landscape works well for creating boom moments when it comes to photo books with big banger shots on the right page.
Oh yes. And then if you've got like a really cinematic like panoramic shot, you could go across the whole double width of it open.
I've got a really good one of them. Books. I've got one of them for my in my wedding album. There's a landscape shot and it's Kev looking all the way across at me with his eyebrows raised, like, and then there's I'm putting the exact same face at him all the way over on the other page. So
brilliant.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So now we move on to the bleed, and this is the area outside of the frame. So again, when we're thinking in print terms, printers unfortunately are not as accurate as a digital pixel. So sometimes things slip on the print, the pages don't always go in evenly. And so you have to allocate for the fact that if you have a full bleed of an image, so if you have an image that's printed all the way to the edge, sometimes things won't quite reach the edge or they'll get trimmed and you've got a space of white paper on the edge. So we add a bleed so that if we do want to overfill that print, we've got a guideline that allows us. And we can have a tolerance of, I usually stick with 3, and that's usually as much as a printer could go wrong. You want to keep this comfortable. Likewise, it's always good bearing in mind. So obviously, I'm looking at this document here, and in terms of our margins, a lot of what we sort of play with and think of in design is all about comfort and fatigue. You don't want to have too narrow a space for your content that things look lost. And you also don't want to have things too sort of in your face where it looks like it actually makes it feel cheap because you're not giving value to the words that you're showing. You're not giving it room. And likewise, you don't want someone holding it and feeling like their thumb is always going to be covering the text and things like that. So there's a lot of thought and psychology that just goes into setting up the baseline.
Yeah.
I could probably talk for hours on what works or what doesn't, but we're going to try and keep this simple.
Well, Angus has got a question for you.
Yep.
Angus says, what about the inner or inside middle page margin width, especially when large or small magazine or a booklet?
Mm-hmm. So again, it comes down to knowing what your printed intent is. So for the moment, I've gone for the inside of 24, so 2 times of, if I'm counting the outside as being a 1 ratio, so a 2-to-1 ratio. And if I'm thinking of my book, I kind of think it to be quite thick. So the thicker it goes, the deeper the spine's going to be. And so the inner parts of that margin are going to sort of bend together as they get bound. So you will potentially need a larger margin so that as the pages fold, you're not having to look into the crease to be, what's it's trying to say. You're not covering it. If you're working on a simpler thing like a booklet that's maybe only 6 pages, you could probably get away with a much narrower ratio. And again, the best thing you could do is always just to print test pages and see what works. And as we may see, as I start to go and design things, InDesign allows for flexibility as we change our guides. And I'll potentially even create some different layouts for different pages using different grids, because we can. So now we move on to the slug. So this slimy little creature at the top, this is just a thing on the outside of your bleed. And I usually add in, not on the inside, let's go at the top. So I usually add in a bit of an area, and this is just an area where you can add information to your printers, for example. So when you send it off, you can put in information about the file number, the version number, the date it was created, other such things that are relevant to the printers to understand your document, but won't actually make it into the publication. You don't always have to use a slug, but it is good practice to have one available to you.
Is it actually called a slug?
Yeah. I'm not sure the origination of it, to be honest.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a thing that sits on the outside.
Wow.
So yeah, we can create our templates here, or we can save these. So I've actually saved previous ones before, and we can create these. So this is our front page, our cover, and we've got our double page spreads, and these will just run through. And you can see at the top here, this blue outline. This is the slug area. So this is where we can put metadata, if you will, about our document if we need to. So first things first, what I like to do is just get started with some typography. So I've actually created a mood board of various things on Behance of some book inspiration. And I was just going through browsing various different book designs and finding all sorts of things that I've thought inspired me. So different ways of laying out the text and the sort of heading and the weight of things. I really like this idea of having dark pages in some of them. And I am a big sucker for overflowing text that like overlaps onto images. I love little details like that. So yeah, I found all of these different things, little hairline touches, tabs that stick in and out. This is also nice that this tab can reference the page previous, which looks like it could be a chapter marker. So as it opens and sort of like fans out, we get all these little details. Again, large sort of pull quotes rather, not coats, and large page numbers. I'm loving these sort of rounded, chunky serifs with a heavy sort of contrast into some of the details on things. So yeah, oh yeah, look at these as well, like overlaying text over images. Yeah, all these different things that just kind of inspired me, and different styles. So these are sort of the things that I like to reference myself with before getting together and piecing together some design. I think it's a good place to start, because you don't necessarily just want to open up a blank page and say, well, where do I go next? You want to look at what already inspires you. You're not necessarily copying, you're just taking different keys from things and just sort of piecing it together.
Mood boards are always good, I think, for everything, honestly. You know, if you make them in, you got them in Pinterest, in Spark, you know, lots of different ways to make a mood board.
Yeah, definitely. And then because we're using Creative Cloud, I get a lot of my fonts from Adobe Fonts, and they continue to add more and more. In fact, you know, this is actually how much of a type nerd I am. One of the biggest announcements at Adobe Max 2018 was unlimited font activation from Adobe Fonts. And I got caught up in this like interview that they were putting together for a promo, and someone came up and they're like, hey, what's your favorite feature that's been announced? And I was like, it's about fonts. And they're like, cool, so you're a designer, or what do you do? And I'm like, I'm kind of mostly a photographer now. They're like, okay. Like, it just really threw them off about what I was most excited for. But honestly, the ability to just add in unlimited fonts, so you can just go through and you can browse through. So in terms of looking for fonts that I would want to work with, so thinking of heading fonts to start with, I want to go for some serifs. I like the idea of it being quite chunky, definitely with some high contrast. That's the area where it sort of cuts into the thinner areas. You know, think of like O's where they've got very thin sort of sections to it and thick edges. I could play around with the width, but I think I'm happy with these. So I generally go through and find some fonts that I like the look of, which I've already gone through.
Well, do you know, one tip, Joe, one thing that I found once, I was making a presentation, and we'd made it like a mood board, and somebody had said that they liked a particular font that was on a poster, and they do a visual search. So you can drag a font into this at the top, and it will find the closest fonts to it.
Which I didn't realize it did it on here.
It's really, I know, and it blew my mind too. So luckily I could find something so close to what they were looking for. Saved me loads of time. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I usually use some different apps for that, but brilliant. I didn't know about that. So yeah, I found some fonts here. I'm quite liking Kepler. Just thinking of this as like a big sort of display font. Some of these were quite cool. Yeah, all sorts of different ones. Anyway, I've gone ahead and already activated a load. So what I'll start with is if we just create some text. I'm thinking of calling this book Back to Travel. Now, this may change, but it's the idea of collecting some images from my travels over the last few years as a sort of reminiscent of what travel once was and hoping to return to. So we're going to enable. So let's go to my recently activated. So I've activated quite a lot, as you see. Unlimited fonts. Let's do it.
There's a lot.
So there were quite a few that I created. In fact, actually, to save time, because I feel like we may waffle ahead, let's open up what I had yesterday. So I had all these different fonts, and I pieced them together just to see how they may look. And then I've pulled out some of the ones that I thought kind of worked well. So I'm quite liking this one, which is Bodoni URW. So that's working pretty well. What else have we got? This is kind of cool, but you start to, as you zoom into the text, you start to see some weird quirks. Sometimes I don't like it. Like I find lowercase t's, there's a few sort of issues. Like
I'm with you.
this little curvy thing's a bit weird. Likewise, I love this bottom one, but that lowercase t, what is going on there?
I know. I'm with you.
Not into that.
No.
But the rest of it, this is great.
Yeah.
So maybe we could make a whole book and just never use the lowercase t.
Yeah. Hopefully you just don't have to say anything with when we with travel. You're gonna have to change it to journeys back to I mean I don't know.
Yeah. And then I'll also create some text boxes, and a little tip you can do with InDesign is if you create a text box and then right click on it and go to fill with placeholder text. I've also created a shortcut for it, which is Command Control P. And that just fills it with a load of Latin looking gibberish, which is a great way of just seeing how a body of text could look. And then from here, you can go and browse all your different font options and see what you're working with. So I'm liking Kepler as an idea. I'm also liking Neuhas Grotesque as some options. And in terms of body text, this is the Kepler as well. So it's good to not mix and match with too many fonts. You can see that different ones, like they start to play on your eyes a little bit. Like sometimes you feel like you could get tired and a bit lost reading through this one. You're like, I don't know about this. Whereas the contrast in these fonts are allowing you to move on to the next lines. So I think I'm going to stick with Kepler primarily. So let's go back to our working document and let's create, we are in chronological weirdness. So Kepler, I'm going to start with just a main sort of body on things, and we're going to create some paragraph styles. So let's open up the basic paragraph. So if we double click into here, so these are ways that we can save different formats of what we want as our sort of like base layer on things. So essentially you're making one-click presets of your text. So I'm just going to set my base to Kepler, and 12 is a little large. I'm going to leave it as auto for now. And one of the other things that I always want to turn off is hyphenation. So we're going to turn off hyphenation. And
why are you doing that?
I just don't like it when a word gets broken at the end of a line. I like it to keep it together, just so that we keep it all consistent and together. So this is just going to be our basic paragraph, and that is essentially set the document to just be this. But we want to create some big text. So I'm going to create a new one, and this is going to be our, let's call this one header actually. So we can base our paragraph styles off of previous ones. So we can start with, as we start to build our styles, we can nest them. But I'm going to leave this blank. I've got preview enabled, and let's just start with some big text, and we're going, let's go big, 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 big and bold. And ligatures, always love ligatures. That's where you get text that blends together. So if you think of like a double T or like an FI or an FL, kind of get some good shapes going on there. Okay, so we're going to set some styling here and leading as well. I usually work with a rhythm that's about like 6-point differences, but I think we'll come to that in a moment. So I'm just starting off with a basic paragraph style. I'll then make some changes in here, and then we can save those and update our paragraph styles as we go. But just to get a basic run of what we're working with beforehand, let's just duplicate that. And now this is going to be our body text, and let's just add in some placeholder. And let's go, why are we not adding placeholder? There we go. So this I'm now going to set as my body. Again, create a new paragraph style. And we'll base this one. This one we can base upon basic paragraph to start with.
And in a photo book, what kind of information are you going to be putting or including in this copy here? Like, is it going to be, setting the scene for,
Yeah, so this is going to be open to interpretation, I guess. So I may want to, piece my images together and then have, I don't know, like a little bit of a story of what was happening as I was taking the image, or maybe something about the location as a whole. All sorts of different ideas on things. Yeah, it's kind of open to interpretation, but I do have a little bit of a list on the things that I would generally want to do. So I always want to have some sort of heading, subheading, a body, an image caption, and then some sort of detailed piece of text that we can pull out in some way. So we're just creating the body at the moment, and I've got different options. So I may go for, actually, I kind of like it a bit lighter. Let's go for a regular on this. I'm setting 10 point, but I may even go to an 8, Some people think that's too small, but
I was going to say it's quite small. Is there a ratio from title to sub that you should follow, like as a good practice, or is it just preference?
You can work with the same sort of ratios. I do find myself quite often using similar sort of ratios. So I'll use like a 6-point rhythm on things. And I'll keep that as like, so say I'll do like an 8-point, a 14-point, a 20-point, and, just and go from there. But I'll also miss out certain areas. So I may have like a very large heading and then go to like a very delicate body text.
Yeah.
But in terms of the leading, definitely. So at the moment, so we're on a 12 to 8. And if I increase it, so the leading is the spacing between the lines, that can make smaller text a little easier to read sometimes. So you won't get lost in it. In which case, I am going to leave this. So this is a 6-point difference we've got here. But one of my favorite things to do, which I think a lot of people don't do, is justification. So this is where you can use the almighty computer to build together your body of text so that it feels really natural. So where lines, maybe run on a little too long or a little too short, you can have the word spacing ever so subtly increase between them, so things feel more natural, so you don't end up with like a large gap at the end, for example, where the next word is too long that it flows on. So
nice.
We can set all these different parameters on our word spacing and letter spacing. So I'm actually going to go from reverse up. So our desired size of each of the characters is 100%, but I am happy to let some of the characters drop down to 94% if needed, and increase to 103% if needed. Generally, I'm happy for it to go smaller than I am for it to go larger. It feels a little bit more natural if that happens. Word spacing, I don't want too many gaps to appear. And likewise, let's do a tolerance. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Oh.
Nitin shares in the chat, never go under 97% and higher than 103%.
See, I'm happy to go 94. In the grand scheme of things, you very rarely do. But I'm usually happy for 94. But I do agree with you. There are certain things, and 103, absolutely. I never want to go larger than that.
Thank you, Nitin. I've put that down on there. And for anybody that could have just joined or has joined late today, we are kicking off the week with a week-long hackathon. I say week-long, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we're giving away a Creative Cloud subscription as well as a book from Joe as we explore creating a photo book in InDesign. So that's what we're doing this week. And so, yeah, the time has flown again. It's like 12:34.
I'm aware of that. So one of the things that I'm also just pointing out here, so obviously I laid out my text originally and I was having a fair number of words across the line. So this is where I'm sort of playing with how my grid would look. And W just allows you to jump back and forth between the print preview and what you're working on. So this is probably the maximum I would ever set. And this is where we can get an idea for how is 8 points going to be looking. And if I zoom in to 100%, is that maximum? Oh, my screen's set to an odd resolution. So I think that's, oh, I can't work this out now. Yeah, I've set my screen to an odd resolution for the stream to work out how 100% actually looks. But yeah, we can get an idea of how things are going to look. And at any point, I can change my basic settings. So if I want it to be 10, keep my 6-point rhythm, work with this. So I'm going to whiz through and I will make some different paragraph styles. So we've got our body text. I'm going to reorganize these and I'm going to create a subheading. And this is where I was going to use that other font, which I think I was using Neuhaus, is it? Yes. Display. And again, I'm going for Chunke. So this is potentially going to be some very small sort of text that may fit with, top body text. Sometimes I even like to keep it the same size as the body text and just let the weight of it differentiate. So let's go, what was my body text? 12. That might be a little too small. Okay. So this will be my sub heading. And let's position that so it looks nice like this. And what else do we want? And the final text paragraph that we'd want to create is just a caption. So this would be, just think of like writing the date or just a little bit of information. Something that just kind of supports the image.
So there's always all this setup in InDesign that I always felt that it was all of the work you had to do before you got your content on the page, right? But
Yes.
all of these rules, and it always kind of scared me a bit before. Out of all of the apps that that we have, but you're making it look really easy, Joe. So it's yeah. I've made so many notes. I've got like two pages already.
So I'm gonna create just a little italic one. I'm potentially going to change how I think I want this to look, but just to get started with some captions. And you'll understand the reason why I like to do this first is so that as I start to piece together my layout and change my design, if ever I want to adjust the design, I can just adjust these paragraph styles and it updates my whole document and it saves me so much time. And this is where I always emphasize, like I'm always the one to, if we could imagine a graph of things, as time goes on, the amount of work that's done is very minimal, but then at some point it rockets and whoa, we've got a whole layout of things because of all this setup work beforehand.
Do agrees with you.
I have my my basic text here, and these are going to be my my ideas and things. And from here, I usually like to just create a bit of a reference of these. In fact, I'm going to change that to that so we've got an idea of how it looks. And let's set this to the same width. So just as a bit of a guide point, I'm just going to place it over there. So I've always got a visual reference of how my text is looking as a balance. Now we're back to the blank document. So what we want to work with is some imagery. So on the cover, I'm going to drop in just a placeholder image that will go across the whole thing. And then let's create some layers. So let's call this one artwork. And let's create a new one. So I always like to work with layers so that you can lock things off if you want to. Let's call this one editorial. That'll be some of our text and things like that. You can change your colors around if you want. And on our editorial, let's bring in our heading. So this is going to be title of our book. And already, see, this is where we're going to start to see some adjustments on things. Oh, let's lock that layer. Oh, I've put it on the wrong one. How did that happen? Let's go. Let's cut you, paste you on that layer. There we go. So this is where I can already see that my leading is going to be way too much on this. So let's go kind of for the same. And maybe even tighter, given that this is a big sort of title. And let's have this centrally done. I may even at some point between now and the next stream go and design something possibly in Illustrator and just like piece together some of this text a little bit more delicately, just to set things. But we're going to work with this and hopefully show you enough to build up a bit of a layout that you can then go through and make your own layouts. So, so we've got a bit of a heading here. Let's have an author name. So myself, and let's set that to our subheading. And let's just start basic at the bottom. Cool. So now let's go back to our artwork and let's bring in some images. So I created the placeholder beforehand with this image. You could also just drop an image in if you wanted to. So I've got a whole host of images over the last, I'm going to say a couple of years, but we've added 2 years of a pandemic. So the last 4 years or so. And I could find some that might be kind of cool, but I think it was this one that I want to work with, and I can just drag and drop that straight in.
Wow.
And now we can then start to work with some other things. So we've not even discussed color and all sorts yet. I think that will be in the second stream. We'll go into more detail on things. I generally like to work black and white on a lot of things with design work. I feel like if you can make it work in monochrome, then it shows the strength to the design. Let's just adjust this image down a bit.
Tony asks, do you ever use quick apply?
You know what? I don't. And I don't really know why. I think I've just built up a muscle memory on things. You mean like the little action menu on things? Actually, I'll tell you what. A lot of the reason why is because I don't use an extended keyboard. So there was a time when I first got involved, and you could use the numerical keypads. I think you could press like 1 for paragraph start, 1, 2, 3, and things like that. I don't believe that works with the short style, the small keyboard.
Tony says it's Control plus Return on Windows.
So let's do
Command plus Return on a Mac.
Yeah. See, I'd probably still find myself always jumping back and forth, to be honest. But good to know. Always good to know. So you notice that I just changed the text color. A way, again, that I like to do a lot of my text colors is actually in character styles. So I'm just going to create this white. And then here, we're going to go and just create, we're going to just set it to paper for now. And as we start to build on our design, we'll change some of the swatches. And again, as you create swatches, you can change them so that if it's used throughout your whole design, you can start to change your layout and things. And if we just start basic with just very plain layouts like this, I can already tell I'm going to be tweaking a lot. I can feel it. It's a bit too heavy.
So good already, though. And Joe, shall we just remind everybody of the challenge? We've said that there's lots of prizes up for grabs. So, and we're going to run this through Discord, right? Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
So this is the challenge is to create a photo book in InDesign using all of this, the tutorials that Joe's taking you through today, back on Wednesday, of course, and on Friday. And it's very exciting. And I love that we're giving away Creative Cloud subscriptions and a book in English and German.
Yes. Okay, right. We are coming into the last 15 minutes. Now, let's rock out some actual layouts of things. So we've done the heavy lifting on setting up some of our type styles on things. So let's now work on this double page spread. So there's a few sort of layouts that I would want to work with, and this is by no means the order of the book itself. We can always change that by dragging and dropping our pages around. But there's a few things that I would want to work on. So I've already got some ideas here on, so we'd have our cover design. I want a strong typographic core, some photography prominent, all sorts of different things, and then some layout options. So a single photo with caption and with body copy, and potentially some quick notes or a extra little bit of information, a multi-photo layout, a double spread, a full image, and a double spread with text, and potentially one with a journey and a map. These ones we'll probably get to for next week. Sorry, not next week, next stream on Wednesday. But let's start with this idea. So we're going to drop in an image and we're going to add some text to it. Let's find something that's kind of cool.
All of those images are kind of cool, Joe. I actually don't know how you would pick, you know, I mean, it's hard.
Let's go for this.
Lots of good images.
I'm choosing this one because I remember this was my desktop wallpaper when I did my first Adobe Live. So I'm going for this one. So I've just dropped in the image.
I remember. I think I was with you for that.
Yeah, it would have been around that time, like a year and a half ago or something.
Yeah, and we were talking about the series Big Little Lies.
Yes, yes. So this is Bixby Creek Bridge in Big Sur, Pacific Highway 1 in California. So I'm going for a bit of an overprint here onto the second line. And let's see, this is where one of the things I like to do is if we copy this, I'm just going to my pages and open up into my master. So this is the sort of base design of the page. Everything that's on this master appears on every page. So I usually like to just set some basic text off to the side like this. And then if we go back to our actual pages, and let's go apply master to all pages. Ooh, that's where we put it in the slug. Okay, never mind. We'll come. Okay, I'm wasting time here. Let's let's do that. Let's do it the basic way.
Yeah.
So have our text here, and then it's always ready to go. So let's have a bit of a image title. So let's call this one Big Sur. And again, I've already worked on this as my sort of title heading. So let's create another paragraph style and let's call this one title. In fact, you know what? The title should be this. Redefine style. Okay.
Nitin does ask you a question about Japanese characters. So what do you think about Japanese characters for a photo book creation?
If the content is Japanese, then yeah, it fits pretty well, or to an audience of Japanese. I love mixing different languages of your work because there's something quite, I guess, innocent about seeing something that you can't read, and you get to explore the letter forms a little bit more. So there's a lot of like artwork on things that I enjoy, primarily because I'm seeing the shapes of the characters. I haven't got a clue what it says, but just seeing that and then mixing in a language that you do speak, yeah, can add so much value to things. And likewise, overlapping. So if we go back to my mood board I was looking at, there was one here that I loved, like this one. I think this is so cool. So obviously you can interpret what it means. I couldn't read the characters, but I know what it's saying.
Very cool.
Okay, so let's go for like this and set my text back to here. So I'm going to go for a left aligned for my header, and keeping my title. Where's my alignment? Keeping my title on the cover page as listed as title. So this is a header. So let's call this actually by its real name, Bixby Creek Bridge. Oh, I love it when letter forms just like create their own space like this.
Perfect.
Giving it breathing room. Okay.
Good leading.
So let's now give this the location, which is Big Sur, California. And that is our subheading. Now, it's a question of whether you want to keep all of your things in the one sort of text box, and then you've got really regimented spacing on things. So if I now move on to my second and add in the body, and I'm just going to add in some placeholder text and set this to body and body. So yeah, it's a question of whether you want to keep things in the same text box and then use your paragraph styles to set your spacing, or if you want to separate some things out over some text boxes and other things over others. So by this, I mean, if I select my subheading, and let's go into indents and spacing, I can add spacing after my text. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see. So we've got spacing here, and with my preview enabled, I can add in space after. You see that that just automatically creates uniform spacing. So throughout a whole book, we can have very consistent spacing. And it is good discipline to set this up ahead of time so that you don't suddenly decide, oh, you know what, my subheading's too close to my body text. This is going to cause problems. So I'm going to stick with, and you can replace, instead of millimeters, you could even put 6 point in there, and that will convert it to what the millimeter format is. So again, matching with our leading spacing that I've done for the body. So space afterwards, you could also add in a left indent on things. So if you wanted that to fill in, you can do that. I'm just doing a bit of a space after, and likewise, let's just go for a little bit more body copy. And
Tony's got a good tip. He says hold down Alt or Opt when adding placeholder text to choose from different sets.
Is that not the same as this with the placeholder options where you've got? I think that might be the same thing. Yes, so you could fill it with different characters, different letter forms if you like. I'm now going to add in a spacing for my paragraph. So at the moment we have no spacing, and this is where do not do what a lot of people do, which is a double return, because that is not typographically correct. So let's go for a regular end of paragraph, and again, indents and spacing, space afterwards, and I'm going to set this also to, let's do a 12 point. Let's go for a double. Oh, mixing my points and millimeters there. Cool. So we are working rapid like this, and I'm going to set some spacing between here. So because these are separate text boxes, I can go into my line window, and again, I'm going to set these to 12 point and distribute spacing. That's way too tight. So let's go for some others in my, oops. Actually, you know what? That was kind of a cool, happy accident. I quite like the distance there.
I think it looks good. It's taking shape so quickly. Like, I know we spent a while setting up the rules and, setting up the page. And now that you're adding in the content, it's just coming together so well.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of, as you explain it, you have to have faith. I'm like, I know that it can appear slow at start, but it very quickly transforms. And I love that. So of course we're using placeholder text at the moment, and that's fine because we don't want to be wasting time writing out what we want to have on the page. But this is, potentially a good starting point for how we'll work. And then what I'd like to do is if I take this double page spread and if I duplicate it, And that's gone funny. What's going on here? Oh, we've mixed up our pages.
No.
No. Let's do it this way.
Undo.
Stop adding afterwards.
You need to add a new layer.
It's dropping in. Okay, I was going to duplicate so that I can then work on a different layout. And then this is how I can sort of like work with different versioning within the same design. So this way I can sort of piece together how I might like to look. So at the moment we've gone for a very standardized layout of things, but I may, if I want to, depending on the image, I may like the idea of overprinting this. So let's say, let's position, let's see how it'll look like this, where we're also very much at time on here.
Yeah, I know, we've got 4 minutes left.
So let's go.
Time's gone.
So yeah, what I will generally do is I'll use my paragraph styles and I'll then start experimenting with my layout and piecing things together and working out what, may start to take shape of ideas on things. And I'm always in my mind thinking, okay, so this design or this layout in particular, ignore this bit of text, but this, potentially is working with dark text over this image, but it may not work with every image. So I'm always thinking like, where am I setting myself rules that could hold me back in the future? And where am I giving myself interpretation that I can change it and still keep the same character and sort of style guide of the book? So what I'm going to do between now and the next stream is I'm going to create some extra layouts. I'm going to tweak some of my paragraph styles, and we'll find some formats that are working. But hopefully this has been a good starting point of showing you some of the basic tools on positioning of things, dropping in images, text frames, and some good principles of starting with your paragraph styles that you can go through and sort of piece things together. And then after the next stream, you can then add in some other things, and then you may tweak them before Friday, where if you're working on some layouts, and we're not asking for, do a full book design, just a single double page layout, or just make something cool, maybe some image, some text, and yeah, see what can be made.
Definitely. And everybody in the chat, give us a +1 if you are up for joining us with this hackathon this week. I know that I can't win any prizes, but I am completely getting involved with this. I'm going to make a book of Elvis, as I seem to have a lot of pictures of the dog sleeping, as everyone does. Takes pictures of the animal. But yeah, please, I see people are saying, lots of people are going to join in, and we're going to carry on the chat in Discord as well. So Tony's put the link to Discord in there, so make sure you join. And Joe, honestly, I've made so many notes today, so I really appreciate how simple you make it look, because it is all the setting up. It looks scary to begin with, but actually it's not. It's just a few simple rules and a few things to consider, and the principles that you say to set us off on a good start. So
yeah. It's I mean, some people may look at it and say like, oh, it's boring doing the early bits, but I thrive off that. I love setting up the guidelines, the grids, the templates. I am such a templater. But as you will see, hopefully by the next stream, things will progress very rapidly once you've set up those foundations. And before you know it, something that may have taken you a week to do, without the foundations, you could repeat in an afternoon. But it just takes that setting up aspect to start with.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for the time today, Joe. Really looking forward to the hackathon this week. I know lots of people will be joining for the rest of the sessions on Wednesday and Friday. Nitin is especially joining from the beach, which sounds amazing, Nitin. And lots of love for InDesign as well. So thank you for giving it to us in a really straightforward and simple way. Everybody, we will continue the chat in Discord, and we look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday. Speak to you soon, everyone. Thanks for the time. Goodbye.
Cheers. See you Wednesday.